Hello and welcome. We will be discussing a topic today which is forever evolving, picking the right technology for your show. Now allow me to thank our sponsors today, OnStream Media. They continue to help us deliver these educational topics to you, and Advantage Boston, along with the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. With their support, we bring these important topics to you free of charge. OnStream Media's technology can help you get better results for your own organization. OnStream's virtual event solutions can connect you with colleagues and customers, extend the value of your events, and boost profits. Webinars and webcasts provide a platform for branded virtual events that can enhance the value of a live show or operate as single revenue-generating events. For a free demo and to learn more about how OnStream webinars and webcasts bring measurable ROI, visit onstreammedia.com. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to Steve Snyder, Chief Information Officer with the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. Steve?
Thank you, Arlene. On behalf of the MCCA and Advantage Boston, I'd like to thank you for taking time to attend this webinar. I'd like to chat just for a few minutes, or maybe shorter, about my methodology regarding technology within the convention space. In fact, the implementation of technology is pretty straightforward, given enough money and the right consulting partner. However, the real challenge isn't the installation; it's the operation, the monitoring, and maintenance of the infrastructure, applications, and systems. So it's a fundamental shift from just buying the equipment to buying the equipment, operating the equipment flawlessly, and delivering IT services. The MCCA is focused on its IT infrastructure assets with the same fervor that we have every other system within the facility, including replacing our wireless infrastructure 4 times since 2004 to maintain the best free wireless that anybody's seen out there. Moreover, we're in the process of replacing it again just for the increased capacity, not so much for coverage, but when you start putting more and more folks within the facilities, we need to allocate the resources for that. Additionally, we've installed 4G and LTE distributed antenna systems, so people's cellular phones work better in our facility than outside of the facility. That being said, we can continue making those investments. If we don't make the investments in the people, we don't have the ability to deliver the services. So we have about 40 folks that are dedicated to just IT. So thank you for your time. And now back to Arlene Shows from TSNN.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Michelle Bruno, Principal of Bruno Group Signature Events. Michelle is a longtime partner of TSNN and is a former meeting planner and exhibition organizer who writes and blogs for leading magazines and exhibition industry publications, including TSNN. With experience in face-to-face meetings as a supplier, organizer, and professional writer, she has the experience and insight to chronicle emerging technologies and their impact on meetings, conferences, and exhibitions. She develops content marketing strategies also that drive lead generation campaigns for live event organizers, suppliers, and technology companies, and is always a popular speaker for us. So enjoy today's webinar. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Arlene. And I wanted to also thank OnStream as well as MCCA for making this webinar possible. I'm really excited about the webinar today. We've done one in the past where we talked about what trade show organizers and event planners want from technology. And I thought we'd get a little bit more into the details about the process for this particular webinar. And I'm really thrilled to have Andrea Barr with SPE. She's Special Projects Manager with the Society of Petroleum Engineers, and Rob Pachurik, a Senior VP and CIO of Access Intelligence. And I think it'll be an interesting conversation because Andrea represents a nonprofit, an association. I think they perhaps have different motivations and different ways that they go about selecting technology and making recommendations. And Rob works for a for-profit organization which not only does trade shows but is a media publishing company So I think he will have some very interesting insight about the approach that he takes and the process that they have for selecting technology. So without any delay, I wanted to start really giving Andrea and Rob an opportunity to talk about the areas that they cover, what kinds of technology they select, give us a little bit of context about their position at SPE and at Access Intelligence. And Andrea, why don't you kick this off and let me know, what kind of technology you select, what kinds of technology comes under your area of your job responsibilities and the kinds of events you do, things like that. Give us a little background.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm now a Global Special Projects Manager for SPE, and we do events all over the world. Our largest event that we manage and participate in as well is the Offshore Technology Conference every year in Houston, Texas. Has approximately 90,000 attendees and 2,600 exhibitors. It's a very, very large show. And then we have also very small shows, and we do that are about 200-300 people with just 10 or 15 tabletop exhibits. Again, that's globally, and we do about 25 to 50 of them a year, depending upon on years and off years, because some of our shows are every other year, which means there's a very large amount of volume coming in and out, and the audiences differ from region to region. I get to not only look at the main systems for the conferences, like your paper proposal management systems that will collect abstracts and go through that review process, as well as registration software that we typically use for more of our smaller meetings, and our floor plan management system, which is starting to roll out to other offices in our Kuala Lumpur office. And I also get to play with what I call play with technology toys. Look at our audience, see what they're needing, find better ways to help them engage with the event, to engage with each other, and introduce those. I try to only do one a year per event to try to get the attendees to have a better experience, get the exhibitors the audience that they're looking for, and give some new opportunities for our sponsors to participate and get visibility in our event.
Great. Now, Rob, my understanding is that your position there and the kinds of things that you look at and review and recommend, things like that, is a little bit more wide-ranging. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do there, what kinds of technology come into your focus, and things like that?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. As you mentioned, Access Intelligence is a B2B media company, and these days we get about almost half of our revenue from events, but there's a larger side to our company that's magazine publishing, newsletter publishing, web development, and I work with all of the different groups with their technology needs. I also oversee our digital teams for design and development. So on the one hand, I deal with our infrastructure. I also deal with our web development and programming, and I also get involved in things like social media and marketing technology. So I work with all different groups to kind of see what their needs are for either their events, their publications, and generally the same process is used throughout when we evaluate technology.
Great. So we have some real heavy hitters here, and I'm so thrilled that you guys can join us. So I wanted to first, I get sometimes people send me emails or I read it on LinkedIn and I see it on Twitter. There's a level of pushback about technology, especially in trade shows and events. I almost feel like people are saying, Marsha, why is everyone always talking about technology? Why can't we do it the old way? Things like that. So I wanted to first, Andrea, ask you, how important is technology? Is this sort of an avenue for your organization to move forward? Is it just, something that you're using to stay current and be able to produce events that people want to come to? I mean, what's your organization's attitude towards technology, and do you feel like this pushback is founded in any way? Andrea?
Sorry. Our attitude towards technology is kind of twofold. The main systems, like the paper proposal management system or registration or floor plan, as we bring in more shows from different regions, those those technologies need to be more and more efficient. So that in that aspect, the technology would be to make everybody's job easier, to be able to support a larger volume. The event technology, like our event applications, those items would be, our exhibitors and our sponsors are constantly coming to us asking for, I want something new, I want something exciting, I want something that's different, I want to be seen better. And that would be the main driver behind our event technology and why we continue to look for something that's going to be cool yet helpful to offer the new revenue streams and offer our sponsors and exhibitors something that they can put their name on and be proud of that will be helpful for our attendees and exhibitors to better navigate the show, get better information, better communicate and network with one another.
And Rob, I'm thinking that since you have the title of CIO, technology must be important to access intelligence. But do you feel pushback? How does your organization approach technology in general?
Well, thankfully for me, as you said, technology is important to our company. But the way we look at it is it's an enabler for the rest of our business. We don't look at technology as the end-all, just bring in something cool and it's going to make money. Instead, we go forward with the plan, and then we look for technology to enable those plans. So in most cases, we're a fast follower. We find things that are working for other companies, and we look to implement them ourselves. We don't try to be on the bleeding edge. But yeah, it's very important to us, absolutely.
So that kind of leads, I'm going to stay with you, Rob, on the next question. We talked a little bit about this, and you just mentioned that you want to be on the bleeding edge of technology. Do you have a technology strategy other than that, or maybe explain a little bit about that specific approach, whether it's formal, informal? Do you have something written? You know, where do you come down on the strategy part of technology?
We don't actually have anything formally written, although it's something that I regularly summarize to other senior managers here of what our direction is. But basically, again, it follows the philosophy of our company, which is to use technology to enable our brands to acquire an audience, and then to be able to market to that audience and sell them things like subscriptions and events. So a big part of it, again, is just our strategy follows that, so we can drive people from our free content to our paid content, whether it's subscriptions, events, and really the technology strategy is anything that helps us enable that.
Mm-hmm. And Andrea, you and I have talked about actually putting down on paper a technology strategy. I know that's a goal for you, but tell me where you are with that, and if there was this giant bucket called technology strategy, what would you throw in there?
That is an excellent question. I'm not exactly sure what I would throw in that bucket. We really are striving to create a strategy, a strategic plan for our technology. At this point, we don't have that, and it does offer maybe too much freedom for us, and it helps us lose focus. We have, and therefore, I think to be efficient in the technology decisions and better driven, that technology strategy would be very helpful. I feel sometimes that we do, when an exhibitor or sponsor says, I want to do this, that we spend time chasing that. And as opposed to if we had a plan, perhaps we would be able to tell them, okay, we're not looking at it for this event, but we are looking at it for this event, and have a little bit more structure and efficiency. And as we add shows, I think that technology plan is going to be more and more important.
Mm-hmm. So my next thought was, there is so much that we call technology. Rob, you mentioned under your, sort of recommendation structure, you're dealing with social media, you're dealing with infrastructure things, you're dealing with specific things regarding events like registration and stuff like that. And Andrea, you're kind of in the same boat. So where do you go to educate yourself sufficiently enough to make recommendations and make decisions about these various technologies? And I want you to be pretty specific about that, especially, Rob, I'm going to start with you. For example, the big three really in events these days are mobile, social, and virtual. So as we kind of go down the road of those three directional things with regard specifically to events, where do you get your information? Enough information that you can, like I said, make decisions about those three things in particular, and then everything else.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have a single answer. I have a whole bunch of answers. And first of all, I subscribe to a lot of email newsletters. Silly as it sounds, even though it's a pain because I spend some days clearing out hundreds of messages that are really spam. I do my best to just peruse all of them, to catch little things here and there about new technologies that are coming out, and if it's something interesting, I'll take a look. If it's not, I'll throw it away.
So I'm not going to let you get away with that. Which ones? Newsletters.
I do read the TSNNE stuff that come out. Also, I didn't mention it earlier, but our own company covers the event industry, so we have a lot of content coming out there. I also follow some of the general media publications like Folio is one of our products, Event Marketer is one of our products. So those are just a few of them, but just even general knowledge out there, technical newsletters. I get stuff from Mashable. I follow Twitter feeds from companies like that a lot. That basically, they'll talk more about like B2C events that we don't go in that are usually ahead of us in terms of technology, but I think they're a good place to start in terms of seeing what some trends are. Mobile's a great one. There's a ton of information out there on mobile and just in these general places like Mashable that we then, we keep our eyes on to see where it's going, how people are monetizing that, and then we look to bring it in. But I also think we've been lucky to make some good partnerships with some of the providers out there. So we do talk to them and see what they're doing with other events. Not only what are they pitching in terms of their own technology, but what are your other successful events using that we should be looking at?
So I can see that, even with other events, you mentioned public types of events or B2C. Do you feel like there's some cross-pollination that could be done in terms of technology that they use that could be translated over into the media and B2B publishing and even B2B events?
Absolutely. When I attend events, actually, it's one I left out. I attend as many events as I can to see, first of all, to learn from the content they're providing, but also I, keep an eye on what they're using in terms of tools. I've seen a few that have used some of these social networks that are connected to the mobile app, and we've looked at that as technology that fits in really well with B2B. B2B, you want to get a very small, closed niche audience, and then grow that audience, turn them into community. And these types of tools that'll take a mobile app and move it in with your community to create maybe more of a 1 or 2 day experience, but hopefully a year-long experience someday. We're definitely keeping our eyes on those things, and I think some of the other bigger brands like Salesforce, for example, they do their big Dreamforce. It's a gigantic conference, but they've done a good job of using Chatter all year round to create a community. So we definitely keep our eyes on tools like that.
Mm-hmm. So, Andrea, how do you even begin to, collect all the information that you need to make these kinds of recommendations and decisions?
I'm naturally a very curious person, so I follow a lot of what Rob just said. I do this exactly the same thing. I Mashable and CNET, and I go to as many events as possible, Twitter feeds, and of course I read your blog, TSNN. I in different Twitter chats, Expo chat is one of them, just to listen to what other people are doing and what's new to them. I also go to a lot of events, and I always look around as to what they're doing, what's cool, what's new, what are people talking about. I try to talk to a lot of people. I talk to exhibitors and I talk to attendees to find out what they think is cool about the conference where we are. I just listen and ask a lot of questions and try to bring what I find out there in the world that's cool, and if that matches the audience that I play to, and bring that into my events. And what's funny is when Rob was talking about Dreamforce, I watched that one as well. South by Southwest, yeah, it's a music conference and a film festival, but it's also an interactive conference, and you can learn so much from going and looking and watching, and as well as what they offer in sessions. And I think there's so much information that even if you don't pay attention to everything that's coming in, when somebody talks about how cool it would be to have X or Y in their show, then you go, oh, hey, wait a minute, I saw that the other day, and then you can go back and research it. So it's a lot of asking questions. It's a lot of knowing your audience and what they're going to respond to, and just being aware of what other people are doing. I get the majority of my information from talking with event planners and exhibit managers out there. What are you doing and what's working for you?
I want to, ask you, Andrea, about filtering. Does all that information just come into the giant steel trap that is Andrea's head, or do you have like a billion Post-it notes around your office, or how do you actually filter, record, collect, put that somewhere so that when those kinds of questions come up in your organization, you can go back to the information you've actually collected? What's your personal process there?
That's an excellent question. I don't know that I have a single answer for that. Emails. We are now going through this email box cleaning process, and I'm realizing I keep a lot of emails, white papers that come out, and now I'm probably going to read them someday, and I file them, and I have a cajillion different folders, and anything that comes in, I will file. Ooh, that's going to be a Wi-Fi thing. That's going to be a mobile app. And I file it. And then when someone says this is going to be cool, it's like, ooh, I go to this folder, or I will ask questions to people out in the field. Hey, I saw this at some conference. Have you seen it before? If so, where? I actually have a couple of vendors that I work with that are at so many shows. Hey, have you been to a show that does this? Great. Can you introduce me to the show manager and so we can talk about it? It's really not a process.
Rob, do you have like a ginormous file folder on your desktop that you just throw everything in there, or do you have tools like Evernote? How do you put all this stuff in one spot?
You stole my answer. Evernote is my favorite tool that I use. I'm definitely anti-paper. If somebody brings me in a big report that's printed out, I tell them to take it back, recycle it. I like to read things electronically. And Evernote, anytime I find something cool, like on the web or through a Twitter feed, I'll paste into Evernote with some kind of tag so I can find it later. Yeah, that's definitely one of the best things. Like Andrea said, too, email is still a big thing. I keep years and years of email, and it's getting harder and harder to search through, but I know that something's there if I need to look.
So I want to move on to sort of the meat of this whole webinar, and this is a really big question. So, throw in the bucket, the metaphorical bucket, anything in this category. But Andrea, explain to me how it works in SPE. Discovery, selection, implementation. Who brings you the ideas besides the ones that you find out in the ether yourself? How do you make the selection, and then how do you implement the technology within your organization?
Very big question.
I know. So I'm going to you first. I know you can handle it.
The discovery process, again, it will depend upon if it's a main system like a floor plan management system or a paper proposal management system, or if it's an event technology. The event technologies, while sometimes we will do an RFP, for the most part, it's just ear to the ground. What are other people doing? What are other show managers talking about? What are their experiences with the technology they are implementing? And really kind of get a good broad view that way. I also do a cajillion demos. I love to hear what the sales pitch, if you will. And then once you have the sales pitch, go to the show managers and say, hey, I know you use this product. What do you think of it? And kind of put both of those pieces together without relying solely on the sales or the show manager. And just keep your ear to the ground. I know that sounds very, I don't know, maybe it's kind of amorphic. It's a cloud. It doesn't really have any forms, but that's just listening and talking and asking questions. For implementation process, typically, and again, when it's not something like a floor plan management system where the entire organization is participating in this implementation, if it's like our mobile app or our on-site kiosk, I implement it myself. I want to know what the problems are. I want to know what the hurdles will be. I want to know what it's like. And then once we've done it for one event, we can have kind of an outline. Here's your process. Here's what it's going to look like. Here are the hurdles. Make sure you watch out for this, and kind of create a flow. And then once it's been implemented a couple of times, we can pass that off to the show manager and go out and play with new toys.
Wow,
did that
fantastic.
answer?
Yeah, that's a great answer. Rob, where do you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I also like that answer. That was great. And we talked a little bit about how I do my own personal discovery, but we made it known in our company that events is where we're spending a lot of time and want to grow. So I probably spend more of my days talking with our event people than just about anyone else. And again, as I said before, luckily we do events that cover events. We have publications that cover events. So there's a lot of information coming into different people at our organization, and they're always giving me, tools to look at or platforms to look at. So there's no shortage of discovery and platforms or tools to evaluate. And then what usually will happen after that is I will either take a look myself first and kind of vet it to see if it's something worth taking further, or I might have someone on one of my teams take a quick look. If we think it's good enough to get to the next level, then we'll sit down with them and maybe do a quick demo, maybe a half demo, like a half hour, something like that, and say, show us what you have. If we think it's worthwhile, I'll bring in all my event people, or at least the senior event people, to evaluate for their own events. At that point, we'll just, again, do demos. Like Andrea said, I love seeing demos. I love seeing how technology could work for us. I love asking questions like how have your other shows that use this technology, how they monetized it. We'll have that conversation, see how technology works with all the decision makers around the events here. And then if we decide to go, we will many times pilot it with either one of our smaller events or somewhere we think there's less of a risk, or we have a quicker way to get it sponsored. And usually it'll be the event teams with a combination of some of my team doing the implementation.
Great. So you finally find this piece of technology that's worthy of it. It made it off of Rob's cutting room floor and into a space where you can actually make a recommendation. Rob, how do you, other than a meeting and a demo, do you have any way that you communicate your recommendation internally? Are you working with written reports? Are you using flowcharts? Do you have spreadsheets? How is that internal communication process moving along?
We try to keep things as informal as possible. We do a lot of sharing through email, but I try not to do anything like confusing flowcharts that might throw off our event people from exactly what the purpose is for this technology. We try to keep it simple, like maybe a bulleted list. Here's this technology. Here's other companies that are using it. Here's what it can do for you. Here's how much it costs. Here's how you could monetize it. Usually keep it very simple like that. Although I've also been trying to get away from email a little bit, because the one thing I don't like about email is if you send it out to 10 people, you might have missed one or two that really should have gotten it as well, unless you go back and send it, they're missing out on that conversation. We're starting to use some social media tools with our company, like Chatter, again, which is something that Salesforce has. I haven't been very successful in rolling that out, but to me, platforms like that where everybody could always listen and you could look at conversations that happened before you joined a company or before you started working with a specific brand, I'm finding that a lot more efficient than blasting out emails to a whole bunch of people. But again, it's just, we try to keep it as simple as possible so everybody understands the basic concepts without being overwhelmed by formal, thick documents.
Andrea, how do you handle that internal communication process when you find something that you want to pass along?
I'm a step behind Rob. I do a similar, I do one-pagers that kind of give the outline and the little paragraphs, and not exactly bulleted lists, and they're actually in Word, so it would be an attachment to an email. And I guess because my audience, my internal audience, some people will read their emails and some people are going to just print off the attachment and save it somewhere. It's just kind of, again, with my audience. And one-pagers. This is what it is. This is what it does. This is why it benefits us. This is how you can monetize it. And just kind of a quick breakdown, nothing more than one page. And then we put that on we have an internal network, so I'll post that page on the internal network. And then we have meetings, which, again, is maybe not the most efficient. However, it does tend to get the majority of people.
Great. Kind of next question we've already answered, so I'm going to actually put a question that's not on the list to you. And Rob, what kind of technology are you currently looking at? What excites you? What is something that you feel is essential to your job, your organization? What kinds of specific technology are really working for you right now that you're taking a real hard look at?
Well, we've mentioned it a few times. That's mobile technology. That's obviously a huge growth area. But to be honest, we've struggled with it a bit here because our communities aren't necessarily mobile friendly yet. So, for example, we have a pretty large, chemical engineering. And Andre, you might have some personal thoughts on this, but at least our audience doesn't spend a whole lot of time on their mobile. So while we want to create a mobile app for those events that serve that industry, we're finding that it doesn't make sense yet because we're not going to get a lot of pickup out of it. But still, that being said, we have other events that are big into mobile, and we're starting to look how can we introduce this to some of our communities that aren't ready for it yet, and more importantly, how can we get it to where it will benefit our sponsors. So right now, you can get a mobile app, create some kind of sponsorships around it, and it's incremental revenue for us. But is it really benefiting the sponsor unless they know what they're doing, they know how to put some time into it? So that's absolutely number one. And then there's a whole bunch of 2s and 3s. There's some newer things coming out there like augmented reality, where if you haven't seen this before, maybe some of you have, where you have different images that almost come to life if you hover your mobile or your tablet over a stationary maybe pamphlet at their exhibit. That's what some of our more exciting clients are starting to ask us about. We're not anywhere near doing that yet, but it's some of the cooler technology that we're looking at maybe implementing some of our bigger shows.
So you're seeing all your attendees wearing Google Glass and sort of walking around the show and getting augmented reality images and things like that?
Yeah, definitely not yet in some of our events especially. And I can give you a quick example. Our largest event is our satellite event, which is coincidentally wrapping up today in D.C. And you think satellite industry, you think high technology. Well, they were the first group that we tried to go with mobile app with maybe 3 years ago. And we thought we were okay because the mobile app worked well on the iPhone, on Android devices, even some BlackBerries, just not the oldest BlackBerries. And unfortunately, the sponsor had 11 of their 14 people walking the floor with the very, very oldest BlackBerries. So you have to do a whole lot of study before you go crazy with new technology, especially in regards to your sponsors, to make sure they're going to get an experience that's going to be okay for them.
Can I ask you, Rob, about social media, because you talked a little bit about that. How are you integrating the use of social media into your organization? Where are you finding it useful? Is it more a marketing thing, or are you using it internally, operationally? Where do you come down on social media?
Social media, it's really big for our company. Primarily, it's a marketing vehicle to make people aware of our content, to drive people to our shows. We have seen increasingly where we are getting people following our links to learn more about our events through things like Twitter and Facebook. We have a couple groups that have upwards of 70,000, 80,000 followers. So that's working for us. We've tried to implement it for our attendees at shows. That's been a little slower, but again, that's something we believe in, and we're going to keep looking for the best way to implement that. But for now, as you mentioned, primarily it's it's a marketing vehicle for us.
So finally, virtual, Rob, both from the aspect of a standalone virtual event alongside your live event, or a hybrid sort of mixture of live and virtual. How does Access approach that sort of thing?
That's another great question. Virtual was pretty big a few years ago, and we got excited about it and started looking into it, and the numbers just didn't make sense for us. The expense was fairly high, not only for us, but for exhibitors that maybe hadn't, like for the Ciscos of the world who are exhibiting in virtual events for other companies. It's no big deal for them to take their virtual platform and move it to another event. But for some of our other exhibitors, it just wasn't something they were used to doing, so there's a whole lot of training that had to be involved. The level of programming was just as intense as it is for a live event. So we decided not to go forward with any virtual shows back then, and we still haven't to this date. However, one thing you did mention is something that we are doing is filming some of our sessions and then making them available either as a part of a registration package or for a fee for people who couldn't come. We haven't done any simultaneous live broadcasting yet, but it's definitely something that we're looking at doing.
Great. Andrea, what kind of technology is real? And I know you, so I know you like to really talk about technology and new and interesting things, but what's catching your eye right now, and what are you thinking about?
I'm going to ditto his mobile technology. I think the handheld devices are really where things are heading right now. And I also, my audience, they're engineers, and they love the new toys, the bright, shiny objects, as long as you can press buttons. However, the only opportunity they have to learn about new technology other than what's in their business is on show site. So whenever we do implement something like an app or something to that effect, there's a lot of training involved. And they're very curious by nature. So they want to play with the new toy, and then they go back and they may or may not utilize it when they get off show site. But I think there's so many wonderful things going with mobile technology. Now there's opportunities to do lead capture through your mobile app. There's opportunities to take the mobile app to a different platform and do on-site kiosks. There's so many new things that are coming into that mobile platform. And again, Rob kind of mentioned about the Blackberries. Our engineers are very big Blackberry users. For our largest conference, I have my largest download are web browser, not Apple's, not Android. So the web browser access also means a Blackberry. And it's very interesting. In my other events, we just got some statistics back from our London event, and there was a very high usage of Apple. So trying to find new toys that you can take into the hand that can work on all those platforms. Very interesting, they're very challenging because, again, with so many devices. But it's you can do video on the devices. You can do live highlights. I'm looking at doing some cool things like the live streaming that he was talking about. We don't currently live stream, but we do record for after on demand. But being able to offer those items through the handheld. We just did for our digital conference the opportunity to download papers. So whenever you go to a technical breakout session, you can download the papers ahead of time or whatever, right there in your app, take notes on it, and then when you go to the session and you listen to the person talk, you can write your notes on it. Those kind of things, which maybe aren't as cool and interesting as augmented reality, but they do offer an opportunity for our attendees to have everything they need right there in their hands and not have to carry books around.
So, Rob, other than the features and functionality of a specific kind of technology, what are the drivers for your purchases? I'm thinking about, and you have mentioned this, monetization and things like that, but thinking about things like security, reliability, cost, integration, compatibility with existing systems. What are the kinds of things, and maybe what's at the top of the list of things that are drivers for at the end of the day, this technology has to meet those kind of requisites in order for me to even go further on it?
Sure. I mean, you did mention it, but number one, I have to reiterate is the ability for us to monetize it. If we see technology out there that's not monetizable, we're going to be very reluctant to implementing it. Number two, we look at customer experience. Is it going to be something that will help our customers have a better show? Then we're going to be likely to look at it. But number three, and it's a big one, is what you just mentioned, compatibility with existing systems. We want to be able to, as I mentioned in the very beginning, capture an audience and market to that audience. So as we have people register for our events, we want the ability to make sure those registrations can be synced into our other customer marketing platforms. And Salesforce is a big one that we're using. We use different email platforms. We evaluate technology to make sure it's going to integrate with those systems. Reliability is a big one. We talked about mobile a whole bunch in some of our shows. obviously have wireless at their events, but some of our smaller ones are just tabletop events that don't. So yeah, reliability is definitely a big one. But compatibility comes before that. ROI is inherent in whether or not we're going to be able to monetize it or not.
And Andrea, what kinds of things? I think it's interesting. Rob's a for-profit, but you're a nonprofit. So are there different kinds of drivers that you that are moving you towards a specific kind of technology when you decide to purchase it, other than what it does?
I think that what Rob said, we kind of flip 1 and 2. I think our customer experience is what's more important. What will make it a better event for our attendees, exhibitors, and sponsors? I think that's our largest driver. And really, a very, very close second is, can we monetize it? I think the first time we've rolled something out, because of the learning curve of our audience, we don't anticipate making money on it for the first rollout. However, thereafter, we're hoping to be able to make money on it. So I believe our customer experience is number 1, followed very closely by monetization. And then thirdly, again, his reliability and compatibility. If we're going to roll something out for my audience, my entire audience needs to be able to participate in it. And then will it actually work when you get on site? When sometimes, as we kind of joked earlier, that technology, the joy of technology is that it's going to have glitches and getting to work through those. So reliability is also very large.
So something you touched on and that I'm really curious about from both of you, but Andrea, is this notion of customer experience, of attendee experience. How does one quantify that? How do you know that your attendee, using one tool or the next, has actually received a positive customer experience or attendee experience? I mean, how do we even have that conversation, Andrea? What do you think?
Again, I go out there and I'll ask questions and talk to people. So on my show floor, I'll just ask my exhibitors, what do you think of X? What do you think of Y? Is it helpful for you? I will stand out in our foyers and listen to our attendees and watch. Are you using the app on your phone? Are you going to my on-site kiosk? Are you standing in front of our highlight television? Where are the crowds, and are you actually using it? So I watch that. Secondly, we do surveys both to the exhibitor community as well as to our attendee community, and we ask the question, what did you think of the mobile app? What do you see? Where do you see we can make improvements? And a lot of people, of course, there isn't usually a large response rate on those. However, we tend to get some really good input, especially from the exhibitor side. They're the ones that are going to say, hey, we'd sponsor it if it did X. And so I pay attention to that, and it's great to ask the question and just listen and learn and watch.
Mm-hmm. Rob, how did your organization quantify the effectiveness of technology as measured by customer experience? It really is sort of this, I think, a gray area. It's a little bit nebulous, but what do you think?
It is. I mean, one of the softer things we do is we try to survey some of our attendees to ask them how their experience was, to get actual feedback from them. But I think some of the new tools are actually quantifiable. There's matchmaking tools out there that we've tried, and you can see how many attendees actually, logged in and tried to set up a meeting with another attendee, or how many exhibitors tried to set up a meeting. So some of that stuff you actually can look at and can get information from and real numbers from. Where we can't, we just ask. Like Andrea said, we ask our attendees. We also, have our exhibitors that we're close with, that we ask them what worked for them and what kind of buzz they were getting at their tables, who liked what. But aside from that, I mean, some of the newer tools that are coming out are definitely quantifiable, and it's just a matter of spending the time after the show and really pouring through all the data and seeing who did what, whether it was worth it to do it again or not.
Mm-hmm. So my next question is about the pace of technology. I don't know how it is for you, Rob, but with trade shows in general, we're not the fastest moving folks on the planet in terms of being really, ahead of the curve with technology. And, obviously there are some shows and organizations that are. But in general, what has been sort of a bit of a difficulty is, as soon as you take the time to implement one technology or one sort of technological strategy, the whole picture changes, and we're on to something new in the world. So, Rob, how did your organization deal with just the sheer pace of change with technology?
It's definitely a challenge. It's something we deal with quite often because, as I mentioned, we have some of our communities that are, say, chemical engineers that aren't really in need of the hottest technology at their events. However, our events that cater to event marketers who are doing the biggest, coolest new things, we have to provide a different kind of experience, or at least, different looking websites and different technologies for them to experience there. So we experience it at the same time across our different communities. And what we just really try to bring it all back to is, how is this technology helping us? How are we monetizing it? How is it making things better? And if it doesn't answer those questions, we just try not to worry about it. Of course, we're always keeping our ears open. We want to make sure that we're not, completely miss some new trends. So we're always aware of what's out there. But unless it really meets some of our basic fundamental needs, we just try not to worry about, how fast things are moving. We put things in place that work for our events and for our communities, and we just keep up the best we can.
Do you pay much attention, Rob, to your competitors? What they're doing with technology, or are you pretty much, staying close to home, looking at the things you normally look at?
Yeah, we definitely look at what our competitors are doing. We either attend their events or get feedback from other people who did attend their events, just to find out, exactly what you said, what kind of technology they're using. And again, we're not afraid to copy something. If we see something that works somewhere else, we're gonna try to do something similar. So not only complementary events or events that are in different markets, absolutely we look at our competitors to see what they're doing.
Andrea, I'm going to throw the same question to you, but I also want you to sort of address how your vendors, your platform providers, the ones that you're using and even ones that you're not, how they're helping you stay, in the loop and keep pace with the change. Because I think they're the ones somewhat driving the change. You guys are as buyers, but the platform providers are always bringing new things in. So how are you doing it, and how are the providers helping you?
Luckily, my audience are late adopters, so I don't need to be on that bleeding edge so much. I have the opportunity to relax and sit back and let somebody else try something new and cool and see how it worked for them, and then pick it up afterwards, which is good and bad, but at least it gives me the opportunity to take a look and have some time. However, once it's out there, there's a lot of training and whatnot involved. And what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
It's how the platform providers and suppliers are helping you.
I talk with my platform providers regularly. They constantly go to events. They're constantly having other events say, hey, I want to do X and I want to do Y. I regularly talk with my platform providers and ask. And I have a couple of shows for a couple of my providers. I have shows that I know that they also do. And so what's that show doing? What's cool? What are they providing? Okay, well, I want to do it too right afterwards. And they actually, again, I'm watching the show. I'm talking to that show management. I'm talking to the providers. What are you implementing for them? I want to do the same thing. I do a lot of copying, and I think we have a couple of shows that I will build off of what they do, and then they'll build off of what I do, and we kind of leapfrog each year. I think our providers are a very large and good source of information. They go to many, many more shows than any one person should be able to attend, and they learn a lot from those shows.
So, Andrea, I've got a question. I've been, reading questions that are coming in, but this one I'm going to throw to you first, and then Rob. They're asking what specific technologies you're using right now, and if you feel comfortable naming names, that's fine too. But for registration, for mobile, for if you're using any kind of social media, event-centric platforms, what kinds of things are you using right now, and who are you using? If you want to say.
We do. This is Andreas. We do two types of registration. For a really, really large event, we outsource that. for our smaller events, and that's defined, large events are 10,000 attendees or 8,000 attendees and above. Smaller events are 2,000 attendees and below. And I don't know that we have anything in between the 2 and the 8, but that would be a question as well. But we outsource anything larger than 8,000, and then in-house we use the Ungerbox system, and they've got the opportunity where you can register on your handheld or many, many really cool technology that they're putting out into the market that we have the opportunity to use at our events. Mobile, I love my mobile app provider, so I'll be happy to give them a plug, and that's Core Apps. They do a really great job. They have a roadmap, you know what's coming out, and they do some of the really top shows, so they know what's going on in the business, and they really, really push themselves to try new things, and kind of before people are ready for it, they'll have it in their platform. And social media, we did a really great thing with Presdo that links with LinkedIn. Our audience is much more of a LinkedIn group than they are a Facebook or a Twitter. And so having the opportunity to use a social media networking opportunity that links to a platform they're already keep maintaining really was helpful for our audience.
And Rob, I'm going to ask you the same question, specific technologies and if you feel comfortable, specific vendors. But I also want to ask you, for a for-profit organization and maybe just a B2B media organization, how do you feel about open source solutions or even free solutions to solve problems? So what are you specifically using, and do you ever go off the res, as they say, and go for some free stuff?
Sure. I'm happy to give some of the vendors we're using some props. Actually, I think a few of them might be on the call. We use A to Z. They have some good solutions out there. Just for registration and for rebooking. We do a lot of rebooking at some of our events. For mobile, we use someone called EventMobi, and they're a little different. They don't, from Core Apps, we've looked at Core Apps, we don't use them. Core Apps is the native application provider, whereas EventMobi is more of a mobile web provider, and that works well for us. And mobile web is usually quite a bit cheaper, which is why we focused on there. But we've also worked with Quick Mobile. We've worked with a couple, actually used Presdo, same thing Andrea said, we've tried them for a few events, had interesting response. I think we haven't decided we're going to walk away from it, but it takes a lot of marketing, getting people ready and training so they know how to use these social networks that are part of a show. We've tried a few others that didn't work very well for us. The other question you had is about open source. We're big fans of open source. Our website's all run on WordPress, which is free content management system.
Which is gorgeous, by the way. Your website looks great. It doesn't look like a WordPress site at all.
Thank you. We've spent a lot of time there, but what we also do is we work to integrate those sites with our other vendors and systems that aren't open source. So, for example, we use Salesforce, as I mentioned before, and we're able to flow content back and forth between Salesforce and our sites that are on WordPress and our registration vendors. I mentioned A to Z. We also use, for registration, we use eTouches for our smaller events. For our bigger events, we use Experience. We're kind of all over the place since we have so many different types of shows, and it's one area where I will happily lend my expertise and my time to evaluating solutions. But at the end of the day, we also let our show managers pick what they want to use instead of putting something in their face. So we find ourselves with probably more vendors than we care to have, but it is a good way to get exposure to a whole bunch of different solutions.
So, Rob, you mentioned A to Z, and I guess you're using them for floor plan sales and things like that. Andrea, who are you using for floor plan?
We also are using A to Z as well.
Okay, great. I want to skip then to sort of our last question because we're getting close to the end if there's more audience questions. But we kind of talked about shiny object, but what I want to know is this idea of RFP. Andrea, you and I had an interesting little chit-chat yesterday about the legend in SPE of your RFP that had 600 line items. So I want to throw this to you. Let's talk a little bit about RFPs, how you use them, when they're appropriate, when not, and what you put in RFPs.
We typically will do RFPs for the bigger software, like the registration or the paper proposal management. those will go out to RFP, and we want to be specific. And while we do want to know what the software provides, and do realize that some of our processes are not etched in stone, we have some actual very specific things that each department really, really must have. And we just line it out. Can you do this? If you cannot, what do you offer along those lines to get here? And we do give them the opportunity to explain, but before we waste, quote unquote, people's time flying in and doing a presentation just to realize that this is not going to work for us, we line it out and do an Excel spreadsheet and add a value and a weighted value to it, and it helps us be a little bit more numerical versus emotional in our decisions, because, again, with those relationships, there are a lot of really wonderful people out there, but sometimes the product just does not match. And so to help take that emotion out of it and be very logical, do you do X? If not, how do you accomplish X? And be very, very specific. Then when the people that come in to do the presentations, we know that they match all of this criteria and they can pretty much do it.
Mm-hmm. And Rob, you mentioned to me that you only use RFPs for really big purchases. So explain that a little bit, where the RFP comes into play for you.
Sure. Before I get to that, though, I want to echo what Andrea said, is that it definitely works as a good tool to let every party involved or every vendor involved know that, hey, it's coming down to this specific reason why we're going to choose or not choose you, so that you don't offend different people that you hope to work with in the future or who are already working with your brand. So that's definitely one great reason for using them. But outside of that, I've mentioned several times we have many events over different industries. If we have a technology like, registration, where we want to bring in more than one event group, then we'll make it a little more official and we'll do an RFP. Or if it's something that we know is going to be, a big monetary investment or a big time investment, or it's going to change the way we do things in general that integrate with our systems, then we'll make it a little more formal and do an RFP.
Great. One final question to Andrea. Do you use an AMS? I guess that's what, attendee management system? Andrea?
Yes, we use more of a member management system because we're an association. It hosts our entire membership. So, yes, we do. For the purposes of our events, it's kind of separate from our registration. We are trying to make the two meet, but our AMS is more for our membership side than it is for our registration and attendee side.
And I know we've kind of come to the end of our webinar, but there is a really good question here. John Moriarty, how are you, Andrea, monetizing on-demand content captured from your live events, or are you?
We are. Some of our events offer that if you register for the event, you get the on-demand piece for the next 3 months. Beyond that, we monetize it multiple different ways. Each paper presentation, which is approximately 20 minutes, each paper presentation can be bought individually to go along with the paper. So you can buy the paper and its presentation, or you can buy the entire session, or you can buy the entire event. And we have different, depending upon the size of the event and the amount of technology involved in that event, the package pricing varies radically. However, we offer it in little pieces or big chunks, or 5 out of the 10 sessions, or multiple different ways.
And Rob, you said you're starting to do that too, a little bit of monetization on content or thinking about it. How do you do that?
Yeah, similar answer. We have e-commerce hooked up to all of our websites, so we typically take our presentations and audio components and make them available for purchase afterward for anybody. But we have been more successful in packaging it right with the registration and either making it add-on to registration time or part of an upsell. But that's where we've been able to see a little bit more pickup.
So this is great. I really appreciate both of you, Andrea and Rob. It's been a really great discussion. I think we've covered a lot of stuff, But if anybody in the audience still has a question, you can send it into TSNN or to me or to either of our panelists. They'd be happy to answer it. And in closing, I want to thank our sponsors again, the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority and Advantage Boston, and of course OnStream, who brought us this technology today that you've all been viewing and have sponsored all of my TSNN webinars. So I thank you very much for bringing these topics forward with TSNN webinars. Again, you can, in a couple of days, you can listen to the webinar again on tsnn.com/webinars. And I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we'll see you again on the next TSNN webinar. Thanks, everybody.